Welcome back to another video in our series about getting dressed in history. Today, we're going to be talking to Roger here in our Powhatan about the typical clothing of a Powhatan man in the early 17th century. So what types of garments are you wearing here? I see you mostly have the lower half of your body covered.
Yes, so today what I've been wearing is my aprons, my leggings, and my moccasins. So for Powhatan people on a daily basis, when you're doing your daily activities and chores, what most people are wearing, both men and women, typically is a frontal apron. But for other activities, like say if you're going to be traveling or going outside of your towns, usually you'll see leggings and moccasins being worn, more as protective gear, and then once weather gets really, really cold, you may see them being worn as a way of helping add more warmth.
And what's the material that those garments are made out of?
Okay, yeah, so all of my clothes that I'm wearing right now today are made from buckskin. So taking those hides from the animals that you've been hunting, tanning them, and making them into that usable leather that can be made into the clothes.
Great. And I believe we've had a video already about processing those hides, but could you talk just a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah. So when it comes down to processing the hides, there's several different ways and methods it can be done, but the way we typically talk about is dry scraping the hide, which is going to be kind of your first step of prepping the hide for getting it ready for the tanning process. So you're going to be scraping it to remove any of the excess hair that's left on the hide. You want to remove anything like meat or fat pieces that were left during the skinning process, and you also want to remove those skin layers, and so that way you're left with just the raw hide that's going to be tanned. These tribes are going to be brain tanning their hides, so you're actually using the brain from that animal, mixing it up, adding it to warm water, and then soaking that hide in the brain water mixture until it is, allowed to really absorb all those oils and fats that are in the brain. That's going to help pretty much lubricate up the fibers that create the hide, essentially. And so when you go to stretch and work the hide, it's going to allow it to be stretched and worked to where you'll have a nice, usable piece of leather when you're done.
Wow, that's amazing. What can you tell me about some of the other things you're wearing? Like I see a belt and a bag. What are those made of?
So these tribes here are going to be very proficient at weaving here. So they're not using looms or anything like that. You'll see finger woven belts like these here. You'll also see some textile bags like this one here. This is an open weave bag. It's going to be able to be made fairly quickly due to the fact that it doesn't have, a whole lot of material involved, say in comparison to a closed weave bag that's been completely filled up. You can see that this one is mostly exposed warp of the bag. So this will allow you to store items, carry items that you need to carry with you, but they can be made fairly quickly, and they can hold up to a lot of daily use and abuse, really.
Wow, that's amazing. I feel like a lot of people may not think about woven textiles when they think about indigenous populations here.
That's very true, yeah. So for these tribes, they're using all sorts of different plants for their cordage production, and several of them are actually very good for things like textile work, things like dogbane, which is a member of the milkweed family, regular milkweed, nettle, and the inner bark from mulberry trees.
So you have quite a lot of accessories here.
Yes,
I think I see some copper and pearls and other things. Is there any kind of like significance or symbolism to those?
Yeah, there actually could be. So for people in Powhatan society, ornamentation and decoration is going to be a very big part of your daily life. So it doesn't really matter, so much what your status is per se, because with some people and some cultures you see, people of higher status having all this, jewelry and decoration, and then people who are of lower status have nothing. That's not really the case here. So with people of lower status, they will still have plenty of things that they can use to decorate and use for ornamentation. But what you'll see is what is it made out of that's really kind of going to determine those different levels of status in Powhatan society. So what I'm wearing today is, like you said, quite a bit. I've got some bone beads, I've got shell, I've got pearl, I do have some copper. So there's quite a bit going on here, honestly. So your kind of lower status, if you will, beads, you could kind of equate with that with being more bone bead a lot of the times, because bone beads are very easy to make. You'll see your next level being those shell beads, because those are going to spend a lot of time making. All of that is going to be done without the use of metal tools until you start trading with Europeans. So that's a lot of time and effort going into that, and so that's going to indicate a level of status that is going to say, I had the ability to sit there and work on these and produce them, or I had enough personal wealth that I could go and trade for them. Then you'll kind of see the really next high level status thing for everyone is being copper. Copper is the only metal that these tribes are working with, and so with that being the case, it is very valuable, but as we know, copper is very soft, so it's not really ideal for a lot of tool making. So it's being reserved specifically for jewelry. In fact, when the English get here in 1607, Chief Powhatan is actually controlling the entire flow of copper into the area for the most part. And what he's then doing is then redistributing the copper to the people in that chiefdom that he's overseeing.
Very cool. What about this pigment that's on the lower half of your face? We talked a little bit about that with Maya as well, but what can you tell me about how men use it?
So it is going to be used a lot of the same ways that the women are using it. There will be a lot of similarity there, but for your daily uses, there's practical reasons, of course. Things like a lotion for your skin, insect repellent, and even a sunscreen. I know if I spend a couple days that I'm out, especially when there's a lot of sun and I paint, it will actually leave a tan line. So it does actually work. Like I said, those are your practical reasons. In Powhatan society, there's going to be multiple reasons why you would be painting besides just your daily, practical wear. You're going to see things like religious ceremonies that are going to be taking place. People of certain status levels will be painting certain ways. Men in Powhatan society obviously will be painting for warfare, to celebrate a victory at warfare or to prepare for an actual battle that may take place. So you're even going to see social ceremonies taking place as well. Today we think of going to funerals, and the main color we associate with that a lot of times is black. The English document in Powhatan society, when things like a funeral would take place, people would paint themselves black. There's a ceremony that the boys have to go through called the Huskanah. Part of that ceremony, the English document is the boys would be painted solid white. So there's many, many different reasons. But on a daily basis, like I said, those are your practical reasons, and some of your more social reasons why you would be painting as a man in Powhatan society.
I can't help but notice you have actual tattoos on your arm. Is that something that Powhatan men would have? We talked a little bit about tattoos in relation to Powhatan women.
Right. So again, a lot like with the tattooing that Powhatan women are doing, men are absolutely going to be tattooing as well in Powhatan society. Based off of our documentation, it is going to lead us to believe that women are usually more heavily tattooed and men are usually more heavily painting. But you will absolutely see both men and women tattooing quite a bit. The men absolutely will have, arm tattoos, tattoos on the chest, the legs, the calves and thighs. They're all very documentable for the men of these tribes from English, writings, but even through oral tradition and people from our tribes here in Virginia using those same traditional designs today.
Very cool. Is there anything significant about how you're wearing your hair today?
Yes, it is. So my hair isn't exactly what you would see for Powhatan people 400 years ago. So I obviously have a full head of hair, but traditionally what you would see men of fighting age really wearing their hairstyle is going to be the right side would be shaved or plucked, you would see what the English describe as like a coxcomb left in the center, and then the left side being allowed to grow long. Now, again, for this, you will see, practical reasons, but also social reasons. What a lot of people will simply talk about is the more practical side of that, and that's because, most people are right-handed. When you go to shoot a bow, you go to pull your bowstring back, you don't want your hair getting caught in the bowstring. That is not going to be a pleasant experience. But there's also, religious significance to that as well that a lot of people tend to glance over. And that's because when we talk to, different historians, and also just by going back on English documentation, we can see that, traditional beliefs dictate that one of their main gods, Oki, would appear to these people, and that's how he would wear his hair, and that's how he would teach them that men should wear their hair as well. So it's got a lot of religious significance to these people, not just a practical hairstyle.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this.
Thank you for asking me questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us for another video about getting dressed in history. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our newest videos. We'll see you next time.